DJ Event Planner will change the way you manage and run your business. Streamline all of your procedures and software into one easy-to-manage system. DJ Event Planner, the ultimate online planning tool.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for Wedding Chat here with Dave Ternier and Jeremy Brech. Mr. Prepared, Jeremy Brech.
I am so prepared. I am preparing like 5 different things right now. So that's how truly prepared I am when it comes to, hold on. There we go. Now I am prepared.
Good evening, everyone. It's Dave here.
And Jeremy. Nice to see you again, Dave.
Nice to see you too.
It's like I haven't seen you in a week.
You know, it feels like it's been that long. Yeah.
So it was funny. It was funny because our topic this evening, there's so many different ways you can take the title of our topic. Actually, I didn't read the title, but I think John was like, what was our topic today? I know we talked about it in the last show. And, you know, I think you brought it up. You're like staging and that type of thing. Or no, it was vice versa, right? Were you the memory loss or was it John?
Both of us, probably.
Probably both. And it was funny because I think you replied after you saw staging and setup. You were like, oh, that's a Jeremy topic. And really, this is not so much a Jeremy topic. This is a Dave and Jeremy topic because I think a lot of people, when they think of the word staging, they think a stage. They think this is, you know, where the band sets up is on the stage and that type of thing. And I think so many people get wrapped up in the word staging that to them, it just means the place where the band plays, you know, or where the DJ plays is on the stage. Yeah. But there's so much more to that word. And I'm excited to talk about this tonight because I think this is such an important thing. And I think you and I both have learned a tremendous amount regarding staging, taking the professional process. Well, professional process does as well, but entertainment experience with Bill Herman. That was a huge turning point for me when it came to staging.
Meh.
Yeah, maybe not so much for you. But for me, it was.
I mean, it was less so for me because Bill's learned most of what he knows from me. So, I mean, I did pick up a few things, but
that's true, I guess. Yeah. Because I know he came and visited you that one time, and you gave him some pointers, and then he basically stole it and ran it and made a workshop out of it, which you should be getting royalties for. But you know, that's
Bill does.
that's a whole different video, whole different show. We'll have that discussion someday, but you know. No, I'm just kidding.
Someday.
So, look, I'm going to let you kind of go. I'm going to let you kind of start this because I want to kind of talk about how staging has really developed what we do in lighting and giving our lighting purpose. And I think that was, like I said, I think that was a big turning point for me because that's when we really started digging into the lighting design aspects of our business. When I started really understanding what staging was all about and the importance of it. So
I think how today's topic came about was chatter from last week, and somebody said something about what do you mean you don't use a podium anymore, Dave, or you've gotten rid of the podium, and something about what do you mean where do speeches happen from? And that was what dovetailed into this. So are you guys still using the podium, or lets people speaking use a podium?
We've never used a podium.
Oh, okay. Or a lectern, as I guess it's properly called.
Yeah, no, we don't. We have never used anything like that.
Got it. They're awful at weddings. Anybody watching this, if you haven't realized this by now, they're awful at weddings. They're corporate. They're cold. They're branded to the hotel all the time. Why is that? Do you know?
Why? What?
Why are lecterns, podiums, always branded according to the building they're in? Like, seriously, so tacky.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense if you're the hotel, but if you're the person renting the facility, or if you're the person needing to use that lectern, yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
It's like a wedding DJ putting up a big banner. Actually, I don't even really care what type of event you do. It's the same thing.
Wait a minute. You don't put your banner on the front of your booth? I'm kidding. But that is a different conversation, which we will do a video on.
We should do a video on. But yeah, I think, anyway, Jeremy's gone. Outstanding.
I got to turn up my volume. I can barely hear you.
Your video's gone, dude.
Yeah, I know. I have it.
So, yeah, I last week, there were some questions about that. So when it comes to staging, yeah, and this is something that I may or may not have learned from Bill. I mean, I really can't remember. It was so long ago now. But when I saw some photographs of how he staged things for the toasts, and he even talks about staging a really unique. He even talks about how he staged a cake cutting photo one time where his gear had to be in a certain spot. So he used Wedding Party, and it was, you'll have to ask Bill about it. It was really, really fun. But yeah, staging, sight lines, where the audience is looking, where the photographer needs to look. I know that many a photographer, while they're initially surprised sometimes by some of the staging decisions I have made for the events I'm a part of, ultimately they really appreciate them in the end because they get better shots. They're not having to fight with the traditional wedding that they've always seen.
You're doing good. I have a computer that is like making some noise, and I don't know if you guys can hear it or not.
No, we can't hear it at all. We just can't see you.
All right. Okay. Well, if it doesn't bother you guys, it doesn't bother me.
Oh no,
I'm trying to eliminate the noise, and I didn't really think you wanted to see my crotch in the image of my.
Tell you what, everybody say it with me. Time for Mac.
I know. I thought you were gonna say you want to see my crotch, but
it's a place where the hotel figures you should put your mic. David, explain, buddy. We've got a comment here. It's a place where the hotel figures you should put your mic. I'm assuming you're referring to the lectern, the podium, David. But in any case, yeah. So for those who are wondering, for those who are curious what I'm talking about, yeah, speeches never happen from a podium or a lectern, technically speaking, anymore at weddings I'm a part of. Nor do I speak from a podium or lectern. I do my speaking either from behind my DJ booth or from out front or whatever I might be doing.
So let's talk about the moments where it's okay to be back behind your booth and it's not okay to be back behind your booth. What are some of the moments that you feel? Let's start with, well, you know what? Let's just go kind of through the process of the evening. Okay. So your first time you get on a microphone. Actually, let's talk about even before you get on the microphone. Where are you while guests are arriving?
Where am I? I'm going to be in all parts of the room at some point during that cocktail hour. I might be interacting with guests. I will be to the kitchen area to double check that dinner is on time, that there's no snafus, this type of thing. Mm-hmm. I will be communicating with photographer about, where grand entrance is going to happen and all that type of stuff and what the staging for that's going to look like. Wedding party's going to be standing here, bride and groom are going to be here. They're going to be walking this way, so on and so forth. And then of course, interacting with guests occasionally. I've always intended on developing the habit of going to every table. I don't. I'm random here, there, everywhere. I'm an introverted guy, so going to tables is actually really difficult for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's kind of what my first hour looks like. I mean, obviously, behind my booth as well, but I am one of those DJs who does not, typically speaking, live mix the music during cocktails and dinner.
Sure.
I build a unique playlist for every single wedding for cocktails and dinner. Rarely, like maybe 2-3 times a year, maybe
so do you use Serato? Does Serato have an auto mix now?
it does not. Frustrating as all hell.
No comment.
I build all the playlists in my crates in Serato, and then I use iTunes for that part of things. So it's like as easy as dragging the playlist onto the iTunes window, and it automatically creates a playlist there. So yeah, I know these virtual people. I'll try out virtual DJ one day. I really should. I just haven't got there yet.
Just saying. I'm just saying.
Yeah, so that's my cocktail hour routine. Gosh, we're straying from topic here, but go ahead.
So I mean, yeah, same thing. Basically, my job as the MC is to make sure that guests kind of understand what's going on. Accommodating any questions that might come up. I also, like in my planning forms, I ask who the host and the hostess are, because a lot of times in my planning portions of things,
what's a host and hostess?
The host and hostess are the people who are basically welcoming people, pointing them, oh, the room is that way, the bathrooms are over here, help yourself to the bar, you can set your gifts here, you can hang your coats up over there. So
you're some fancy places compared to this guy.
Yeah. So we have bathrooms, yes. But their job is basically to kind of help direct traffic before parents come, and usually we don't want the parents to be working anyways. So as long as we know who the host and hostess are, then it allows us to kind of help them and go over the direction that the bride and groom gave us in our planning finalizations. So, I'll ask them, is there anything at the bar that your guest should be aware of? Oh, well, we're hosting this and hosting that. Great. Have your host and hostess come talk to me when they arrive, and then I can relay that information, so you guys don't have to worry about it. Because the last thing the bride and groom are going to want is a phone call saying, "Hey, we're at the venue. What did you want us to do now?" Yeah. So we're just there to kind of accommodate and alleviate some of those questions that would come up. Yeah. Other things, I like the fact that you pointed out, checking with catering, make sure everything's good to go there. I think that's extremely important, and I think probably gets overlooked a lot. Yeah. Other things I would say, I am back behind my booth, just kind of keeping track of, making sure I've got my cues ready to go. So when I'm doing introductions, I don't have to be like, oh crap, I don't have their song ready. So I'm kind of jumping back and forth to my job as a DJ, but also my role as an MC, just kind of walking the room and accommodating the room. I think you and I are pretty much on the same page with that. So you're behind your booth, but yet you're still out in the crowd.
Yeah. One other quick thing that I do during cocktails, by the way, is if there's going to be a blessing over the meal, I will go over and introduce myself to that person.
Yep.
And I will just give them a quick, couple pointers on mic technique. And I will tell them all they have to do is stand from their table, look toward the bride and groom. They don't have to walk anywhere. They don't nothing. And I deliver them my second wireless microphone, so that when I introduce them to say grace from where I stand, there's no walking. They literally just stand up and magically they have a microphone, right? There's no delay.
Okay. So let's talk about how we stage the room for the overall success. And the reason I want to talk about this right now is because, how does your welcome happen? And how do you capture the room? Where are you? What are you blocking? Where are you looking? Those type of things. So in an overall staging of the room, how do you typically, not request, but recommend your guests to set the room?
My bride and groom to set the room?
Yep.
Yeah. So typically speaking, central dance floor, head table, guest tables on either side in kind of a half circle configuration, so to speak.
Okay.
And most venues, that's possible. Not every venue, but most venues, that's possible. Head tables always, on the long wall, if there's a long wall of the venue, and dance floor up front, and then guest tables all around.
Yeah.
And typically speaking, again, 9 times out of 10, my setup is, speaker on either side of head table with my little 4-foot table booth on one side of the head table or the other.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So talk about your welcome then. When your welcome happens, and I'm on the same page, I agree. I love having the central dance floor because I don't want to interact with just one side of the room. I want to be able to interact with the entire room. and I don't want one side of the room to feel like they're not involved in the dance because they're way over on the other side. So I think a central dance floor is extremely important. Plus, when it comes to staging, it's important for us to be able to walk out to all of our guests and not just one side of the room for our guests.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
So I think what's that?
How I explain it to the bride and groom, or the couple, I should say, is all we want to do is we want to have the average distance from you to your guests be as small a number as possible. So, you know, we don't want you at the one end of the room, because then the furthest guest away is a long ways away. We want to bring down that average distance between you and every guest down as low as possible. And they get that. They get that.
Yep. Yeah. Cool. Okay.
And then as far as the welcome and so I do that from behind my booth. And this is something that I have wrestled with. I've gone out in front before as well. And I should get into doing more of that. I quite often go straight from my welcome into grand entrance and all that. So because I'm a one-man show, as I think you are typically speaking, I have a pile of music to hit. So obviously that's all, the way I'm currently set up, that's all triggered from my controller.
Okay. So I am completely different. I don't think a welcome should happen behind your booth. And the reason being is because it disconnects you from your guests. I feel that it's, you know, when you talk about your facade or you talk about your booth, it basically, to me, it just cuts you off. And I like being in presence because your guests are going to hear, they're going to hear you speak behind your booth through the entire evening. But that welcome is so important. And I feel that my presence of being in front of them and involved with them, I think will engage them off the bat. So then they understand, okay, he's on the microphone, we should be paying attention. And I think that allows me to control the crowd a lot better throughout the entire evening at that point. I think that first pulling them in, it has to be, I'm here amongst all of you, you know, as a friend, as a whatever it is. To me, I think outside of the booth is important to do that welcome.
Yeah, I can't argue any of that, which is why I prefaced with, you know, yeah, I should get back into doing this. What type of, should you just then back up to your booth to go to your music cues? How do you do that?
So typically I typically use my welcome to engage guests and inform them. And that was one thing that we learned in Marbella, was to inform them that, you know what, I'll be right back with your wedding party. So I always leave a little bit of a gap. I basically go out and line up my wedding party, or get my wedding party prepared. Let them know that, hey guys, I'm going to go do a quick welcome. I need you guys to all be right here when I come back. So if you use the restrooms, go do it now, or, you know, prepare yourselves. And then I'll do my welcome, and then I'll go back out. I'll go back out and get guests situated, or get the wedding party situated exactly how I need them. So I'll just put basically background music back on once I say, you know, please find your seats. Thank you. I'll be back with your wedding party, whatever it is. And then, you know, play that nice background music as guests are finding their seats, and go prepare wedding party. I have that song already queued up, like I'd mentioned before. You know, I'm making sure I've got my cues ready to go. And then as soon as I get wedding party where they need to be, tell them exactly how the doors are going to open, where they're going, directions, all that stuff. Then at that point, I fade the music and introductions happen.
Got it. Do you, 9 times out of 10, I mean, never an absolute, but do you typically have a person from the facility or whatever manning the doors to open the doors to the grand entrance, that type of thing?
No, usually what I'll do is I will utilize, if we're not introducing ushers, I'll have ushers run the doors. Typically the facilitator they usually take care of the catering as well. It's rare that there's outside catering coming to some of these venues. And if for some reason I don't have an usher, or if in some case, if I don't have any ushers, then I'll typically use the second people in line for my introductions.
Yeah.
So they're going to open the doors, and they're just going to leave them open. And then depending on what facility it is, I might have them kind of tucked behind a corner. So they'll open the door, they'll get tucked behind the corner, and then they'll come around. Otherwise, there's some venues where the doors are here, And then when you open the doors, my bridesmaids and groomsmen, brides are over here, or bridesmaids are over here, groomsmen are over here. So then they meet in the middle and they go through the doors. So there's a lot of different ways to utilize the people who are in the wedding party instead of asking a facilitator to help take care of that.
So I, typically speaking, always ran that same way as well. Welcome separate from grand entrance. And for a couple of years. And then I tried it the other way a few times where welcome went straight into grand entrance, no pause in between. And I experienced dramatic difference in energy. And at a lot of my events, everybody's sitting the moment I start that welcome. So I would often get weird looks. Oh, he's going to go away. Okay. But what maybe did it for me most, and this is why I asked about if somebody mans the doors, is, I mean, I'm overly clear sometimes. I shouldn't say that, but I'm abundantly clear with directions to the wedding party. And I kid you not, I would get once, maybe twice a year, when I welcomed everybody, they would walk in. Yeah. Even though I had said, I'm going to come back out here. So that was another reason I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go straight from one to the other because it's less confusing for them. And when I have everybody's attention, everybody's ready and rearing to go. So yeah, it's yeah. I'm glad you've never had that happen because you looked surprised.
No, I haven't.
Really?
Yeah.
Man, it's so frustrating. I mean, talk about throwing you off your game, right? Hey, everybody, welcome to so-and-so's wedding reception. And bride and groom walk in. You're like, go!
Yeah, no, really, the only time I've ran into situations is where it's like, all right, please help me welcome your wedding party. And that was their cue to open the doors. And I'm like, okay, you can open the doors now. So those are really the situations that I run into is sometimes they can't hear or they're like, okay, what are we going to do when we go in? They're so involved in figuring that out that they're like, oh crap, that was our cue. Open the door. But yeah, most of the time I've never had someone just come through the door when I'm in the middle of a welcome. Because I take the music up to another level. I take my energy and my voice up to another level. So, when something big is happening. Yeah. When I go and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go do a quick welcome. I need you guys just to, get prepared, be ready. I'll come right back out. Knock on wood. I've never had someone be like, all right, that's our cue. So
if this happens to you next weekend, don't hate me.
Oh man. You cursed me. You cursed me.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Serato Pyro. I need to try that out. Apparently. Serato Pyro.
Sounds safe.
I'll give that a whirl. How on my iPhone? Yeah. So for anybody watching that doesn't have the YouTube feed running right now, day and night DJs. Sorry, I always forget who that is. Says Dave, I just use Serato Pyro. So I create everything in Serato, and then I dump it into Serato Pyro on an iPad, and I let it auto mix from there. So yeah, never tried Serato Pyro. I know of it, and I think I even downloaded it once, but I don't think I've ever opened it. Anyway, carry on.
So that's up. That is introductions. Let's talk about cake. Where do you stage the cake? How do you stage the cake? I'll just keep drinking.
That most of the time with me, it depends. It's venue restrictive as to where it will go. Sometimes in the middle of the dance floor, but that doesn't always work. Or sometimes it'll depend what we're going to do with that cake cutting. If the cake cutting is going to be something that adds energy to the function, then we'll put it maybe closer to the dance floor or right alongside the dance floor because we're going to have everybody gather on the dance floor, and then we want that energy to stay on the dance floor. Or if it's going to be something, more romantic, more intimate, pardon me, then its proximity to the dance floor, provided it's in good view, isn't always as important. Oftentimes, though, it's on the other side of the head table from where I'm at.
Okay.
So if I'm on the left side of the head table, it's on the right side, vice versa. Again, venue dependent.
Got it. Yeah, I think we're both on the same page on that. I like to have it in the dance floor area. One of the things when I talk to a couple is don't ever hide your cake. You're going to spend more than $30, $50, $200 on this thing. Don't put it in a corner. Don't hide it in the corner. And I think a lot of that becomes important because what we've learned in Silver Master Ceremonies from Rebecca is there is so much interest, and there's so much story to tell about the cake cutting. And I think that just creates another moment for people to be engaged with and involved in. And you don't want people to, have to go look way over the other side of the room. So if your center dance floor provides a nice stage for your cake, take advantage of that.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. This is slightly off topic, but related. I have talked the occasional couple out of a cake. Have you done that?
No, I don't argue with them. I don't say that they have to have a cake. I've had people who are like, well, we don't really like cake. I'm like, okay, well, what do you enjoy? So they'll do a pie, or they'll do pies, or they'll do donuts, or whatever it is.
No, some of the people I've talked out of it, they were going to get it just because everybody did. And I would share with them, the why and all that type of stuff. And if after that, they just didn't engage with it, they were like, oh, that's cool and all, but no, we're just going to have them because. I'm like, well, then why don't you not have one?
Yeah.
Oh, that's option. Stop spending money on things just because.
Right.
So I've had a number of situations where that's taken place. And I get thanked for that, A lot of people do things at weddings just because that's the status quo, that's the norm, even though they don't know why. And even after telling them why, sometimes they'll go, oh, okay, well, that why is cool. But no, let's just not do it.
We still don't.
I mean, honest question, Jer. Would the guests at your weddings miss the cake cutting if it didn't happen?
The cake cutting or cake?
Both.
You would have to have some type of dessert, I think, to accommodate your guests. The
dessert not served with the meal typically?
Well, it's served after the meal.
But is dessert not served as a part of the meal, I should say.
Yeah,
that always takes place. But here, cake is always in addition to whatever dessert's being served with the meal.
Oh, yeah. No, that's there most of the time. So there's a couple different ways. Sometimes there's cake and extra dessert. Sometimes there's just cake. Sometimes there's just extra desserts. So, I mean, it varies. Like you said, it's just kind of it's dependent on the event itself. I would say 90% of my couples will have a cake. Now you asked the question, do you think anybody would miss the cake cutting if it didn't happen? That's a great question, because there are some people that have been to, or we get a lot of repeats, it's like, oh, I haven't seen you guys in however long. And, no, I'm sorry, not repeat weddings, but like referral clients. So like their friend is now getting married and they had gotten married. I remember doing one wedding where we didn't do a cake cutting, and I had done this couples and this like family's wedding, and they came up to me afterwards. They're like, oh my gosh, we missed the cake cutting. Like, no, they didn't do it. They're like, oh, well, we loved it when you did the cake cutting at our wedding. And so, I mean, I think it's rare that would happen, that people would actually miss a cake cutting. Right. But people who have experienced how involved I get with the cake cutting, what we do with the cake cutting, and the engagement, I think some people would notice it. I don't think they would miss it, but I think they would notice that it didn't happen.
Right. Question. Why do they cut the cake, formally speaking? Question in the chat. The cake.
That is a whole video in a whole show in itself.
Yeah, that might have to be.
So it's a great question. There's a huge story behind the cake cutting, and actually, what I would recommend is, just because it seriously could be a whole nother show.
Yeah.
Go research, you know, the traditions of a wedding cake cutting, or where did cake cutting begin? Why do we do it? Those type of things. Go Google search it. Dave and I have both taken, and a lot of my DJs have taken the Marbecca workshops, which I know you hear me talking about this a lot. And actually, I just posted a video on DJ Idea Sharing about, you know, people always are trying to upgrade their gear, but, you know, go out and upgrade your talent. And the silver, to me, the silver workshop is the biggest turning point, because the first workshop you're working on, the bronze workshop, you're working on technique, you're working on voice, you're working on, in the way you use your voice to project to people and engage with people. And then in silver, you start, I think, taking it to another level with understanding the traditions. And that's exactly why I'm like, well, I don't know if we can really get into that. I would definitely look into, if you've taken bronze, definitely take silver, because that's where you really start understanding and learning about the cake cutting.
Yeah, I would also suggest as well, like, honestly, there is so much information out there. If you Google, and I just did, what did I Google? What is the symbolism of the cake cutting is what I just Googled. And there is a website if folks want to check it out, blog.weddingfavorsbynet. That's NETTE.com. She's got a pile of stuff written about it. And what you really need to do is read through all the different stuff that's out there and find a few that speak to you, and then create your own ceremony around that information. Yeah, you may mix that information up depending on the couple as well. Like, I don't actually know specifically what Jeremy says, and I don't want you, Jer, to spoon feed your words to me right now.
No, I'm going to.
This is something that, you know, Mark did not spoon feed the words to us either.
Right.
He said, he said, you need to read about this and you need to create something out of it. And yeah, I have experienced the same thing that you have, Jeremy, where people go, wow, thank you for turning that into something that was more than just a, you know, $200, $500 photo op moment, or whatever the monstrosities of cakes cost these days.
You know, and the beautiful thing when you take that workshop is, you know, you look at all of the information, you start creating your cake cutting. But then what I love about it is he actually has you play the role of the bride and the groom. And, you know, so you're kind of acting this out, and every single moment for every single couple is going to be completely different. Did they shove the cake in each other's face? What does that mean? You know, maybe they didn't. You know, maybe the cake is a single tier. Maybe it's just one piece. Maybe it's a 3-tier. So how does that change the conversation? So there is so much, you know, like the 3-tier, and I'm not giving a spoiler, but if you look it up, you'll find it. The purpose or the reason a cake is built into 3 tiers is because it was a representation or a replica of St. Bridal's Cathedral, which you can find in London. And again, I mean, to some people, they're not going to care. You're going to know when you can use that and when you shouldn't use that, or you really can't use that. You know, if someone has a single tier cake, you're not going to be like, well, the reason they do a 3-tier, you know, you just like slammed the bride and groom. Apparently they couldn't afford a 3-tier, so we're going to stick with a single tier. But most bridal cakes are, you know, a 3-tier. So you definitely have to do your research, and you have to know when to use it, when not to use it. And like I said, you're almost commentating the moment, and you're not just scripting. You can't just write, here's my script, this is what I'm going to say at every single cake cutting. But enough about the cake cutting. Like I said, we can do a show on that sometime. Let's talk about other things, because we've got about 5 minutes here. Let's talk about other things that you stage. Yeah, I know this is flying by.
Yeah.
Let's talk about other things that you stage throughout the evening. When are you behind the booth doing another announcement? Now, I know you do toast different than I do.
Much.
So go ahead.
Aside from hosting whatever kissing activity might be taking place, hosting whatever buffet invitation activity might be taking place, which happens.
And if you missed last week's show on the kissing thing, go check out the show from last week. It was actually a really fun show.
That was fun. Yeah. So yeah, and typically there's some activity to choose order of tables to the buffet as well. That is the majority of what happens at weddings I'm a part of. So aside from those two major activities, the majority of my work takes place from behind my booth.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, from you know, love story to, you know, dance introductions to toast introductions to all of that type of stuff.
Okay, so let's talk about inside the dance. Let's talk about anniversary dance. How do you do anniversary dance?
Occasionally,
generations, whatever you want to call it.
Occasionally, when it's a part of the plan after discussing first. Yeah.
Okay. So how do you engage with guests on that? Do you go from behind your booth? Do you go out?
Both in that case.
Okay.
Yeah, both in that case.
And for me, it's a go out on the dance floor. You know, encourage people to come out, kind of become their friend. You know, going by all these different couples, having a conversation with them while you're telling people exactly what's going on the microphone. You know, so you're telling everybody, but it's like you're talking to these people. To me, I find that it connects well with people, and it also helps me kind of gauge my group and figure out, okay, you know, I think we're going to be able to go past 40 years, or I think we're going to make it past 50 years on this. So then I know how fast I need to start eliminating people as well.
See, that answer I have beforehand all the time.
Oh yeah,
couple. So if we do this, I need to know who's going to be the longest married couple.
But not every bride and groom can know that. Not every bride and groom's going to have that answer.
Every one of them.
Not me.
Absolutely, they do.
Not down south.
They have a pretty good. There are some cases where they go, gosh, you know what? It might be Uncle so-and-so. It might be grandparents. It might be da-da-da. I'll say, would you mind just asking your parents? Oh, yeah, you bet. Yeah, they'll know who the oldest. And boom. And that way, we will sometimes set up a surprise something for that couple based on what they like.
Okay.
So if they happen to know that it's going to be grandma and grandpa, and she happens to love XYZ flower, we may just happen to have one of those when this moment concludes that night.
Sure. Okay.
And of course, I now know what number of years to get to as well.
Yeah.
Which, as you just alluded to, is really helpful because then you know how fast to pace it out.
Let's talk about bouquet. How do you stage a bouquet?
Bouquet and garter, I am typically on the dance floor for the majority of that, with the exception of having to push play, you know, on a couple different songs. I don't overcomplicate the song selections when it comes to that. Typically speaking, you know, one song for the bride, tossing if she's talking a bouquet, and oftentimes two songs, not always for garter. You know, one song to bring the guys up, and another for the toss itself. If we're going to do something funny there, you know, he'll, you know, the groom will be ready. You know, she'll be sitting on a chair. The guys will be staged on the side of the dance floor where there are the least guests sitting down, so that people can see what have you.
Sure.
And then if we are going to do some funky different song for the removal itself, I'll let him almost start, and then I'll ask him to stop and go, wait, this music doesn't work for you. Hold on a second, and I'll make it a stop moment.
Yeah.
And then
throw in some Magic Mike.
God. Yeah.
So when it comes to bouquet, I am out on the dance floor. I am completely involved in that. We do some fun things with that. The garter, believe it or not, well, I mean, maybe you would believe this. So in the Midwest, it's very common to auction off the garter. So auctions are extremely popular here. Yeah. And I'm actually a pretty spicy auctioneer. I can do a pretty good auction. The most I've ever brought in on a garter auction was just over $4,000. Yeah.
And the DJ got paid $500.
Yep, I got paid $500. Yeah, and I would say on the average, when I do a garter auction, I'll bring in. It used to be like $300 to $500. I would say now I'm probably about $500 to $800 on a garter.
What?
Yeah.
And does this money come from one single person?
No. Nope. Nope. We do a last dollar auction, which means the last person to put the dollar in the garter wins the garter. So it's very random. There's times where, you know, going once, going twice. Oh, we got another dollar. Oh, we got 20 here. We got 20 here. We got 10 here. We got 1 here. So basically it just keeps building up the pot. And then there's a point where I just kind of cut it off and say sold. And then if you get those people that are like, oh, you know, we got one more bid. I'm like, great, bring them up. Those are great donations to the bride and groom, you know? So they still, you know, they still get those couple dollars, but
a last dollar auction. I've never heard of that in my life.
Yeah. Yep.
So that,
yeah. I mean, the reason we do it that way is because if one person has to come up with all this money, it's going to go for $200. You know, it's not going to go for money.
Yeah.
Yeah. If that, because not one person. Well, I mean, if you do a last dollar auction, you will get a lot of people who will next thing you know, they did spend a lot more than $200. And I kind of keep that tracked in my head. Like, okay, this guy just brought up another $100 bill, you know? So this guy's like $400 in, but their garter is at like $1,200 right now. So I will, when that guy makes a bid, then, and I tell people, I'm like, hey, this is going to go fast. This could happen any second, you know? So there's times where I'll go going once, going twice, sold, or I'll go going once, twice, sold right over here to this guy who's already spent $600 on this thing, you know? So yeah.
So that does assume that people have actual money with them, though.
Oh yeah, it's cash. Yeah, they have to bring cash.
Gosh. I have an event coming up in March where that would be a fun way. It's not a wedding event, but that would be a fun style of auction to do. Problem is, people don't carry cash.
Most venues have ATMs. I've never been to a wedding where they're like, I don't have any cash. Seems like everybody has cash. Okay, so 3 minutes left. Let's talk about how you stage the end of the night. How do you stage the final farewell? What do you do?
I don't know. Sonic every time and go home.
You what?
Play closing time every single night and just go home.
You probably do. You probably do. You know, I always tell the bride and groom to pick out one fast song and one slow song. And basically, like, the last slow song is the song that didn't quite make the cut for their first dance. Right. So, and I also let them know that, you know, this last slow song might happen an hour before the night is over. Because if you have a fun, rowdy crowd, they're not going to want to end on a slow song. They're not going to want to end the last hour on a slow song. Yeah. So right. I always have that. And then, and that could be, you know, 10 minutes before the night is over. But I don't ever end with a slow song. Or I shouldn't say, it's rare that I end with a slow song. But I like to make sure that I've got everybody's attention and they're engaged in that last moment, whether it's a slow song, whether it's a fast song.
Yeah,
I want the bride and groom to kind of take in what just happened. You know, all of their friends and family were still there celebrating with them at the end of the night is a really powerful thing. And I love seeing a bride and groom come up afterwards and say, wow, you know, that was so amazing. But just helping them understand one last time that, you know, these people, wow, you know, they're here for you guys. So yeah. I loved kind of sharing that moment with everybody.
Yeah. I would say I set that up in a similar fashion. Certainly, you know, getting everybody up on the dance floor, what have you, depending on when the wedding ends, of course, this can, you know, bring a variety of challenges sometimes, but you know, I always do tell my couples ahead of time, you know, look, you know, rather than end at some random time, you should know that I'm going to watch your guest count and this type of thing. And we don't want to end with the last 20 people who won't have a clue what the hell happened tomorrow because they're so wasted. You know, we want to end with a crowd that's meaningful enough that, you know, can sing you guys out in the fashion you deserve or whatever the last song might be. So, and I do get, you know, some pushback to that sometimes, right? Because people have this up here anyway. People have this idea in their head that the longer a party goes, the more successful it is.
Yeah.
You know, the wedding that went till, you know, 2 or 3 or 3:30 in the morning is the one against which a lot of others will get measured unfairly, right?
Right.
I mean, sure, no question about it. If it went till 3, Yeah, it was probably a good time, but it doesn't mean that a wedding that ends at 12:30 can't be just as good a good time.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So that's I mean, that's a societal thing around here that people still struggle with and fight with a little bit. But I mean, I remember a wedding from a few years back. It ended at midnight or quarter after 12. And it was a great fun night. But there was a look in the bride and groom's eyes of disappointment that their crowd didn't stay till 1.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously there can be logistical reasons for that. You know, maybe literally 80% of the guests have a 45-minute drive home because we're out in some small town, middle of nowhere, where there are no hotels, right? I mean,
right.
And that's maybe something I need to get better at coaching my couples on ahead of time is, okay, so your wedding's happening in this community. Do you know if a lot of them are staying overnight? I mean, they may not be able to answer that, but, you know, that way I can maybe build some expectation in with them on, you know, look, you know, if you're the last of your friends to get married and all of your other friends have children that are ages, you know, 2 to 7, you need to realize that between 10:30 and 11:30, there's going to be an exodus of people.
Yeah.
Seen that happen so many times. What? Most of our venues shut us down at 10 p.m. Oh,
I want to work there.
Yeah. Nothing but gold for 120 minutes of dancing. Don't have to pace things out. Don't have to.
Yeah, that'll actually, you know what? We should have a show on that because it's funny, you know, talking to some of my friends down in Texas, talking to my friends on the East Coast. They're like, yeah, we do like an hour-and-a-half dance, or we do like a 2-hour dance. I'm like, you're kidding me. We're 4 hours nonstop. You guys are like 12 hours nonstop. And that's the dance. That's not just the reception. That's the dance.
I know I'm going to get some hate for this, but God, to every one of you that has an hour to 2 hour, maybe a little over 2 hour dance, to all of you, that would be so easy compared to what I have to do.
All right. Well, thanks for watching the show tonight. I am Jeremy. That is Dave from Canada, who plays for 8 hours straight during a dance. Good show. This was fun. This was kind of cool to see the differences in how we kind of structure and how we stage things. John, I don't know what we're going to do next week, but we'll figure that out later. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Good night.